Hi! Within this section, we're going to focus on post-connection attacks. Now, since we know the password of the related network, we can be connected to those networks, okay? Now, we're going to attack the devices on the same network. We're going to see one of the most popular hacking attacks, which is called man in the middle. We're going to see what is man in the middle and how to use it to steal some information from the devices on the same network. After that, we're going to see additional features of this attack in order to capture the keystrokes or capture the screenshot of the victim computer. And of course, at the end of this section, we're going to discuss how to make ourselves safe against these hacker attacks. Now, if you're ready, let's get started.
Hi! Within this section, we're going to focus on post-connection attacks when we are on the same network. When you're watching this section, bear in mind that these attacks only work within the same network. Of course, later on within this course, we're going to see attacks that we can implement outside of the network as well, but in this section we're going to focus only the networks, inside networks attacks. And in the previous section, we have learned how to crack passwords of the networks, how to crack passwords of the routers. So we will assume that we are on the same network. We are connected to the same router as a target, as a victim machine in this section. And we're going to see some attacks, and we're going to see the discovery first. We're going to discover the devices on the same network with usage of some tools. Later on, we're going to attack to those victim machines and steal some information, and of course we will learn how to protect ourselves in order to have a safe working environment within a network. And in order to simulate these conditions, we're going to use NAT network once more. So within the three previous sections, we have used our USB Wi-Fi card. But from now on, we can use NAT network. Because why? Because we are on the same network with virtual machines when we use NAT network, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open the virtual box, and I'm going to select my Kali Linux and go to the settings and go to network tab and choose NAT network instead of bridged adapter, okay? And I'm going to plug out my USB Wi-Fi card because I don't no longer need it. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to do that for Microsoft Windows as well. We're going to use Windows as a victim machine in this section. Windows and the Kali Linux will be on the same network, so we can simulate some attacks as we are connected to the same router. So if you manage to do that, let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to see how we can discover the devices that are connected to the same network as we are. Hi! Within this lecture we're going to see how we can discover the devices that are connected to the same network as we are, and there is a very great tool in order to achieve this. Okay, and it's called NetDiscover. Later on in the Python section, we're going to see how we can write this tool as well, so we can have our own NetDiscover tool. But for right now, I'm just going to use it. And in order to do that, you have to type netdiscover-i in your terminal. We will specify the IP range, but in order to get this, let me run ifconfig first. So let me make this a little bit bigger. So as you might know by now, ifconfig gives us the current interfaces and the IP addresses, local IP addresses. As you can see, I'm not connected to the WLAN O because, as I said in the previous lecture, we're going to use NAT network to simulate some on the same network conditions. But as you can see, I'm connected to the ETH0, which has the IP address of 10.02.15. So IP addresses, local IP addresses, generally has this range from 1 to 255. So any device connected to this range, any device connected to this network might have the IP address of 10.02.1, 10.02, 200, 10.02, 254. So let me run this. Net discover IETH0, this is my interface, and -r range. And in order to specify the range, I will say something like 10.02.0/24. It means that go from 0 to all the way up to the 255 and scan all the devices that are connected to the same network. And as you can see, now I have these IPs in my network. So anytime you want to get out of this screen, you may just hit Ctrl+C in your keyboard. But let me tell you the results of this Net Discover scan. So here you see the vendor name, and you see the MAC address and the IP address. So we match the MAC address with IP address on the same network. Okay? So we have different kinds of devices in here, but let me show you something else. I'm going to plug in my USB Wi-Fi card. I'm going to scan this network with my local IP when I'm connected to the router directly from Kali machine. And you don't have to do that, don't worry. I'm just going to show you different versions of Net Discover. If I want to do this right now, if I run ifconfig, then you will see that I'm connected to the internet with my WLAN-O, and I have the IP address of 192.168.127. Now I have a different local IP. I have one starting with 192. So if I just run Net Discover with IWLAN-O and with range 192, okay, so -r 192.168.1.0, and I have to add /24. So it will scan every device from 0 all the way up to the 255. So let me run this one more time. I believe now, yeah, we got the results. As you can see, now I see different results. When I ran this with 10.02.1, it only displayed the results within the virtual machine. So I could have seen the Windows machine, Windows virtual machine and everything. But if I do this with my USB Wi-Fi card, now I see the real devices like my phone or my MacBook or my other connected devices on my home router. So in the following sections, following lectures, I'm going to use NAT network, and I'm going to do this operation with 10.02.1 in order to simplify things and in order to simulate the same conditions as I'm using USB Wi-Fi card. But in order to avoid the complexity of USB Wi-Fi card, I'm going to go for NAT network anyway. So right now you know how to do Net Discover scan, but let me stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to deep dive into this issue more. Hi, within this lecture we're going to see another discovery method within the same network called Nmap. And actually we can use the Nmap for outside attacks as well, and we're going to do that in the following sections. But right now we're going to focus on how to use Nmap within inside the same network. And you can use Nmap within terminal, and you can use nmap --help in order to get the documentation of Nmap. But I'm going to use another tool called ZenMap, which is basically a graphical user interface for Nmap. Okay, so we can use Nmap functions within ZenMap, but also we will have a graphical user interface. And we can reach the ZenMap from the applications pane on the left hand side, but also we can actually call for ZenMap within inside the terminal as well. And maybe you have seen other tutorials doing this only within inside the terminal, and it really doesn't matter, it gives us the same result. But I'm going to run ZenMap here and show you the tool, the graphical user. As you can see, now we have a software in which we can interact with buttons and screens and everything. So I'm going to do the same discovery scan that we have done in the NetDiscover. So I need my IP address right now. And in order to get my IP address, what do? I open a new terminal and run ifconfig as usual. As you can see, I don't use my USB Wi-Fi card, but rather I'm connected to internet via ETH0, and I have an IP address of 10.02.15. It means that my IP range can differ from 10.02.1, 10.02.0 all the way up to the 10.02.255. So I'm going to use this information, and let me make the screen a little bit bigger so we can see it better. And here we have a profile and a target. And in the target we have to specify the range or specific IP. So I'm going to say 10.02.0/24 as we did in NetDiscover. So in here you can do an intense scan, a ping scan, a quick scan. So we have different profiles. And the ping scan is the most basic one. I'm going to start with that. We don't need intense scan at this moment. We're going to try other scans as well, don't worry. And in here in the command section you will see the actual nmap command. If you choose another thing, the command changes. So if I copy this command and paste it on my terminal, it will give me the exact same result, right? So let me start with ping scan right now and hit the scan button here. So it starts scanning the network and it displays the results in here. So rather than getting the results in my terminal, I'm seeing them on this graphical user interface. So it is relatively slower when we compare it to the NetDiscover, and as you can see, I got the results back from ping scan. So if you look at the results, you will see that we have the host on the left pane side, and we have the details of these hosts in here. So I have the IP addresses and I have the MAC addresses as well. So this is basically the same thing as NetDiscover. I have 10.02.1 and I have the MAC address for that. And bear in mind that most of the time, 99% of the time, 10.02.1 or 192.168.1.1 is the router. Okay, router gets the first index in an IP range. So we can know that 10.02.1 is our router, but we don't know what this 10.02.4 or 10.02.15 is. Actually, we know the 10.02.15 because it's our own IP address, but we don't know what 10.02.4 at this moment. And we cannot get that information from NetDiscover. But maybe we can get this from Nmap. And in order to get this, we have to do another scans. We have to do some more intense scans as well. Ping scan is the most basic one, as I said before, and it only displays the information of IP and the MAC address matching. Let me do quick scan and see if we can get more information. This isn't a guaranteed way to get more information, but it is actually stronger than the ping scan, so it sends a lot of requests compared to the ping scan, so it might get some additional results. So let's wait and see if we can get additional results from quick scan. And as you can see, it takes more time compared to the NetDiscover and compared to the ping scan. Here we have the results. Now, as you can see, we have a lot of results back. So here we see the IP addresses once more. So this is for 10.02.1, and under 10.02.1 I know this is router, but now I can see some ports and some states and some services. So I can see which ports are open. Later on within this course, we're going to see how to attack systems, and this port information is very important. Okay, we're going to use all of this information when we try to pen test into systems, because if these ports are configured poorly, then it might be a good way to hack into those systems. And here we see the open ports of 10.02.4, which is a device connected to our same network, and we can see the 22, 134, 139 is open, and we can see the service they are running, and we can try to get into those systems by using these ports. Later on in the system pen testing section, we're going to deep dive into this. But for right now, in order to understand these results, you have to know what we are seeing, okay? Generally, it isn't enough only to see the port state and service. We have to get the versions of these ports as well, in order to understand if there is actually a vulnerability that we can exploit to hack into those systems. And in order to get these version numbers or additional information, we can try to do another stronger scan with Nmap as well. Right now I'm doing quick scan. Maybe we can do some quick scan plus. So it will send more requests and it will get more information regarding to this. And it will take obviously more time to get the results back. So hit the quick scan plus and wait for a few minutes until you get the result back. So once you get the results back, maybe you realize that there's a lot of information in this quick scan plus result. Now we see the version of the ports and we see some additional information as well. This might give you a clue to hack into those systems. And what do we do generally when we get this result back? As I said before, we won't focus on these ports and vulnerabilities of these ports in the section. We're going to do that in the system pen testing section, but I believe you have to have the general idea that what we're going to do, what we're trying to do when we get these Nmap results back. So I see the version here, the services version. So for example, I have OpenSSH 6.7 SSH service running on port 22. So generally when I see that, I copy this version or the whole thing, it really doesn't matter, and I Google it for vulnerabilities. Okay, so first I try to get the basic information about that version. So go to Google and copy one of these vulnerability possible results. Okay, just copy one version of some port and paste it in your google.com. So for example, I'm going to search for OpenSSH 6.7 exploit. So as you can see, I have some results back, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into one of those results and try to understand if there is any known vulnerability regarding to that version. And if there is a good way to hack into those systems using that vulnerability, I will take my chance and try to hack into those systems. As you can see, there are a lot of information and documentation on this port version. Maybe I can get something out of this. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this explanation. I'm going to do this example in the penetration testing section, But for right now, I just wanted to show you the possible implications of using Nmap. So you don't even know what ports are used for right now. So I included some general ports and their usages, their protocols in my ethical hacking handbook, and you can get this port from there, and also you can try to Google it and find it on your own, of course, because there are more ports when we consider all of the services that we can run in Linux. So it's not possible for me to list all of them in my little PDF file. And at this moment, you don't even need this information, but there are some students who are really curious and who really don't want to miss some step, don't want to move forward without understanding some step. So I just wanted to include and show you these port numbers as well. So there are some ports, there are some services running on those ports, and sometimes these ports are configured poorly, so hackers can actually exploit those ports and hack into the systems. And Nmap is a great tool to show you all of these vulnerabilities in one place. And as I said before, we're going to focus on network attacks, within network attacks in this section. So I don't plan to use Nmap further in this section, but I just wanted to show you that there is a tool called Nmap and ZenMap, and this is a great tool. So we're going to stop here, and in the next lecture we're going to focus on network attacks, mainly a popular attack called man in the middle. Hi, within this lecture we're going to learn a very popular attack in ethical hacking called man in the middle. So I'm going to explain what is man in the middle and how hackers can use it in order to steal data from victims, and later on we're going to see how to do that in the following lectures. So suppose that you have a router in your home or in your work or anywhere. So within that router we have two devices connected. So we have a hacker machine, which is a Kali machine, and we have a victim machine. So generally they send their request to the router, and router sends to the request to the internet and gets back a response and forwards that response to the individual machine. So hacker machine connects to the internet with the same way, right? They send a response, they send a request, and get the response back from the router. But there is a vulnerability in this system. We have something called ARP. It actually stands for Address Resolution Protocol. But there is a vulnerability regarding to that system. We generally use this ARP thing to ask for MAC addresses. Okay, so router can send an ARP request to the individual devices saying that who has this IP address, okay, who has 10.02.15, who has 10.02.1, who has 10.02.5. So router can match the IP address with MAC addresses. And if this device really has the IP address of 10.02.15, it says that, yeah, I have this IP and my MAC address is this. So we can have a list of MAC address and the IP addresses. And NetDiscover actually works on this principle. So it sends an ARP request to the all IPs and it gathers the MAC addresses and it shows us the list. And as I said before, we're going to do that in the Python section. We're going to write our own NetDiscover with sending ARP requests to all the devices in the network. And the vulnerability of the system is that if you don't send an ARP request, you shouldn't expect an ARP response. But in our real life conditions, we can get an ARP response even if we don't say an ARP request. So even if this router doesn't ask who has the IP of 10.02.15, this hacker machine can say that I have the IP address of 10.02.15. So if I can get the IP address of this machine, let's say this has the IP address of 10.02.5, and I can say to the router, I have the IP address of 10.02.5, so that this router will think me as the victim machine. So this router will think me that I have the 10.02.5. Then I will go to this machine and I will say that I have the IP address of 10.02.1. So this machine will think me as a router. So I will place myself into the middle of the connection. So whatever this device sends a request, it will go through me. And also responses will go through me as well, so I can see all the traffic, all the packets that are going through me, and I can steal the data of this device and of this router. So I can see the passwords, I can see the usernames of this device. So this is called man in the middle, and we do this with something called ARP poisoning. And as I said before, ARP poisoning is the process of saying this device that I am the router and saying this router that I am the device. So there is a tool to do that, an ARP spoofing tool, and actually in the Python section we're going to see how to write this ARP tool as well. Now let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to see how to manually ARP poison some victim. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can do the ARP poisoning thing that we have discussed in the previous lecture. And we're going to run the Windows machine and the Kali Linux machine at the same time in this lecture, because we're going to use Windows machine as a victim machine from now on. So I'm running on my Windows machine and it's on the NAT network. Okay, so let me confirm this. If you open here and type cmd to search, it will bring you the command prompt. So this is basically the terminal for Windows. So if you run ipconfig rather than ifconfig that we have run in the Linux, it will display the IP address of the current device. So if you type ipconfig and hit enter, you will see the relevant information regarding to this Windows machine. As you can see, this Windows machine has the IP address of 10.02.4. Below we can see the 10.02.1 as the default gateway, which is the router address. So we are certain that 10.02.4 belongs to the Windows right now, and we're going to attack on this. The next thing that we want to learn is how to get the ARP table of the current Windows. In order to do that, you just type ARP-A. So it shows you the IP address and the MAC address of the interactive computers, interactive devices of the Windows. So this is basically the output of NetDiscover, but it only shows the output of the interactive devices. So I can see the 10.02.1 has this MAC address and 10.02.15 has this MAC address as well. So this is the true values. This is the real MAC address of my router, and I have the MAC address of the Kali machine. But later on we will change this table. When we do ARP poisoning, the Kali Linux will have the MAC address of the router, because this Windows machine will think Kali Linux as a router, and also a router will think Kali Linux as a Windows machine. And in order to achieve this, I'm going to run ifconfig here to confirm that I'm on the same network. I'm connected with ETH0, I have the 10.02.15 IP address. So you have to be on the same network in order to conduct this attack. So how do we do it? We use ARP spoof command. After ARP spoof, you specify the interface by -i, and my interface at this moment is ETH0. And after that, I have to specify the IP addresses, okay? And we're going to do this for the victim machine and then the default gateway machine. So my victim machine in this example is 10.02.4. So if you have different IP, you have to write this in here. And after that, you have to specify the router address. So the router address in my case is 10.02.1. So how do we know this information? We know this information from NetDiscover, right? Because when we run NetDiscover, we got this. And I'm opening a new terminal here because I will run the same command vice versa. So what do I mean? So let me paste the command in here, and I believe something is wrong. We're going to make it right, don't worry, and I will explain why I'm doing this twice. So in here we have to add some parameter called t-t, which stands for target. Okay, our target is 10.02.4, and we are telling 10.02.4, which is Windows machine, that we are the router. And we're going to do that with the router as well. We're going to tell the router that we are the Windows machine in the next terminal. So if I say 10.02.4, 10.02.1 in here, then I must say 10.02.1 and 10.02.4 in here. So just change the position of these IP addresses, okay, and hit enter. And you don't have to write your own IP address. You will need to give the router address and the victim address in different terminals. Since our both terminals are running, then we have to check if our attack is successful or not from the Windows machine. So I'm going to run this ARPA once more, and if you pay attention to the 10.02.1 and 10.02.15 result in here, they had different MAC addresses, since this is true. But if you look 10.02.1 in here, you will see that this has been changed. So the MAC address of 10.02.15 is now the MAC address of 10.02.1, because Windows thinks 10.02.15, Windows thinks Kali Linux as a router right now. So our ARP spoofing has worked. So Windows thinks that Kali Linux is router, and this is actually happening in the router as well. Router thinks the Kali Linux as a victim machine right now. So Kali Linux can see the packets at this moment. So Kali Linux is the man in the middle. So this is how ARP spoofing actually works. But in order to make this work in real life, we have to run one more command on a third terminal. And we have to run this command every time we run Kali Linux, if we try to do a man-in-the-middle attack, of course. So let me show you what I mean. So if you open a third terminal in here, I will run a command enabling IP forwarding. It means that the Kali Linux will be able to forward these packets coming from Windows to the router and packets coming from router to the Windows. If you don't run this command, Windows will lose its internet connection. So you have to say echo 1 and then greater than proc sys net IP v4 an IP forward. Okay, it has to be exactly like this. So just take a note of this. Echo 1 proxies NAT IPv4 IP forward. It means that put a 1 into this IP forward file. If there is a 1 in this file, IP forwarding is enabled. If there is not a 1 but a 0, IP forwarding is disabled. So we are writing 1 inside of that file. And remember, you have to do this every time you open your Kali Linux. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to see a framework in order to do all of this stuff for us. Hi! Within this lecture we're going to cover man-in-the-middle framework. So far we have been learning about ARP or ARP attacks, and we have been doing this manually by running ARP tool in our Kali Linux. But now we're going to move on to a big framework in which we can handle all these man-in-the-middle attacks, and in which we can see the results, in which we can see the responses from the target computer in the terminal. In order to do that, in fact, we're going to work with man-in-the-middle framework, and then we will move on to some other framework called BetterCap. So you will get to choose your own favorite, and you will get to do these attacks in both frameworks. Okay? And the reason that we're doing that is the man-in-the-middle framework is actually kind of outdated right now. So let me go to google.com and show you what I mean. By outdated, I mean it's not being updated anymore. However, it works, and it works better than BetterCap in some of the circumstances, okay? So if you come over here to google.com and search for man-in-the-middle framework, MITMF GitHub, it will take you to the GitHub page of man-in-the-middle framework, okay? So you have to write this MITMF GitHub. So GitHub is the web page that we share the codes, that we share the source code of the programs, that we get to collaborate with other developers, and we get to see the source code of these popular softwares, popular tools like man-in-the-middle. Okay, so this is what we are looking for. Okay, just click on the first result and it will take you to this ByteBleeder man-in-the-middle framework. And as you can see, this repository has been archived by the owner. It means that it's not getting updates anymore, and the owner of this archive has updated this tool at least 1 year ago. Okay, so it got its late update in a previous update 1 year ago, but again, it works well. So I'm going to open my downloads folder, and you don't have to do that because I already have man-in-the-middle framework over here. So I'm going to delete this and just install it from the scratch so that you would know every step, okay? And in order to install this on my computer, I'm just click on this button, okay? I'm gonna click on this button and say download zip. So it will download this program, this software, into my Kali Linux. Once you save file, it will start to download, and it's actually something around 200 kilobytes, so it will be very fast for you like that. Okay, so once it's installed, you can just click over here to open your downloads folder, and then you may close down the Firefox. And if you couldn't open it from here, you can just click on these files and then come to your downloads. Now we have to unzip this. So if you right click over here and say open with archive manager, you can just drag and drop this man-in-the-middle framework master folder to your downloads folder. Okay, now you can even delete the zip because we already have man-in-the-middle framework over here. Now you can see this man-in-the-middle framework master folder, and this master folder you can see there is a file called man-in-the-middle framework.py .py. So this is a Python file and we're going to run this, okay? And this is actually not the only file. We have a lot of libraries and other stuff going on in this man-in-the-middle framework, but we're gonna work with this file mostly. And I forgot to show you the readme file of this man-in-the-middle framework. So I'm going to open it one more time. You don't have to do that, but I just want to show you, okay? So if I go to github.com, ByteBleeder one more time. So let me search for ByteBleeder. Yep, this is the one that I'm looking for. So man-in-the-middle framework. Of course, I could have just searched it in the Google as well. So if you scroll down a little bit, you can see the usage and the installation instructions of this man-in-the-middle framework. Now you see all the commands here that you're going to need when you use it. But don't worry, I'm just going to show you how it's done, okay? But later on, if you need anything, then you can just come over here and look for it. So now, as I said before, we're going to run this man-in-the-middle framework py file in order to attack the target computer and in order to start an ARP attack and be a man in the middle, okay? So let's do that actually. In order to run this, we're going to use our terminal. So open a terminal and I believe we can just make this a little bit to the right and we can come over here to make this a little bit bigger so you can see it better. Let me zoom in. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into the download folder, okay, by writing cd downloads and then cd man-in-the-middle framework master. So if you hit tab, it will autocomplete for you. If you say ls, you will get the available files and folders, and we are particularly interested in this man-in-the-middle framework.py. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to write Python, and if I leave a space, I can run any file that I want with, of course, the extension of py. So now I can just say Python man-in-the-middle framework.py, and then let me close this down because I believe it blocks our vision, okay? And then I'm going to give some parameters over here like ARP spoof. It means that I'm going to run an ARP spoof attack. And even before this, I believe we have to specify the interface like ETH0. So if I had my USB Wi-Fi card connected and if I was trying to attack with that USB Wi-Fi card, of course I had to write WLAN O over here rather than ETH0. But right now I'm connected to NAT network in both virtual machines, okay, in both Kali Linux and Windows, so I can run an attack using ETH0 as well. But if you want to do that over wireless network, then you're gonna have to go with WLAN O. And then I will specify ARP spoof, and then I will specify the gateway MAC address. No, not the MAC address, actually, the IP address. So if you run ifconfig, you will see that our own IP is 10.02.15, okay, which is our NAT network IP, and it means that our NAT network gateway is 10.02.1, and our target is actually 10.024. So 10.024. So how do we get this? Remember, in the Windows, if you come over here and if you run cmd from the search file, okay, and just open the command prompt, if you run ipconfig, you can see it has the IP of 10.024. In the real life example, of course, you're gonna get this from netdiscover or nmap. But now we know the target is 10.024, and I'm going to run this attack against my Windows machine. If I hit enter, as you can see, I get an error saying that this file pom.py gives me an error, giving me an error, okay? So this is a plugin and we're not even going to use it, and it causes some problems in the coding section. Rather than diving into the coding section, I'm just going to delete it because at this point we don't even know how to work with Python. Later on we're gonna learn, but right now I'm just going to go into these plugins and find the file palm.py and delete it, okay, like that. And if I come over here and hit the upper arrow button on my keyboard, I can hit enter and it will start this attack for me. And I'm just going to stop that video for a second, pause that video for a second, and I will explain something to you. If you have run that attack as the same as that I did, but even if you have deleted the file palm.py, if you're still getting errors, then you're gonna have to do some additional setup over here. So this is the installation page of Man-in-the-Middle framework. Don't worry, I'm just going to include that web address and the commands that you have to run in order to make this work in the resources of this lecture. Here you can see there is a command to include and install every library that this Man-in-the-Middle framework should have in order to be running properly. So I'm just going to copy this from here. Okay, I'm just going to run this on my terminal, so it will download some libraries in order to make this work. These libraries may have been installed on your Kali Linux as default, but in case if you get any error, then you should run this. So let me zoom in a little bit so that you can see it better. As you can see, it is a long line and it has some Python development libraries over here to download. If you see something like that, you have to say why, meaning yes, I want to download all of these things, and it will download it for you. It doesn't end here, unfortunately. If you do that and run the Man-in-the-Middle framework attack one more time, and if you continue getting some error messages and everything, then you have to come over here to dependencies. So as you can see, we already do this downloading and running Man-in-the-Middle framework, but actually we didn't do this yet. So let me show you what it means. After this is done, then we're going to install the Python libraries, Python dependencies to make this work if you get any additional errors. Okay? So let me come over here to my downloads folder, and in here I have the Man-in-the-Middle framework master, and over here we have this requirements.txt. So this is a list of the dependencies, the necessary modules that Python has to have in order to run this in a proper way. So we're going to download all of these things as well in order to test one more time if you get any error. Okay, if you don't have any error, you don't have to do that. So let me go into my downloads folder one more time from here, okay, and then we're just going to reach that requirements.txt and pip install everything. So let me close this down, okay, because we're going to do that inside of the terminal. And let me try to go into downloads and Man-in-the-Middle framework master, and over here let me clear this up so that we can see it better. If I say ls, then I will see this requirements.txt, and all we have to do is run pip install like this. So this pip install command is to download Python dependencies, and actually we're going to use that a lot in the Python section as well. So let me paste this and run this. So after this is completed, then you will be able to run Man-in-the-Middle framework tool in a proper way. If this doesn't work for you, if you try everything but it still doesn't work, then I believe you're good to go with better cap. But in most of the cases this will work, okay, and in most of the cases you will access the passwords and usernames and all other stuff of targets using this Man-in-the-Middle framework. So after you run this, just wait for it to complete, and then I'm just going to stop this and go back to my previous video where we continue using man in the middle. So now I'm man in the middle and I'm running an ARP attack against Windows machine. So far so good. Now if I come over to my Windows machine, if I run ARP A here in order to see the ARP tables, okay, so it will give me these results. So as you can see, 10.02.1 is the gateway and it has the MAC address of this. And we have 10.02.15 as well. It has the exact same MAC address. It means that Kali Linux is actually man in the middle. So our attack works. Now let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to see how we can gather the information in Kali Linux using man in the middle framework. Hi! Within this lecture we're going to see how hackers steal information when using man in the middle framework. Okay, so now I'm going to go into my browser over here in my Windows machine, and I'm still running the man in the middle attack in the Kali Linux. So to begin with, I'm just going to go into the settings and clear the browsing data, because I don't want my existing data to interfere with my operations, so I don't want any miscommunication. So I suggest you clear the data when you try to test the man in the middle attacks. Okay, so now I'm going to go into some website called unicornitems.com. So what is particular about this website is that this website belongs to me and it runs on HTTP rather than HTTPS. We're going to dive into the differences between HTTP and HTTPS later on, but right now you have to know that HTTPS is the secure connection version of HTTP. So let me in fact show you the difference. If I go to google.com in my host computer, as you can see, it displays a log sign. It says that this is encrypted. So most of the websites use HTTPS right now, okay? And it's actually harder to crack this down because even though we are man in the middle, if we don't strip this SSL, if we don't strip HTTPS to HTTP, it means that we're gonna get the packets anyhow, but we're not going to see what's inside of them. For example, in my own website, in atilsamansiolu.com, we already have this HTTPS as well. But in unicornitems.com, I don't have this HTTPS, and it even displays as non-secure by the Safari. Okay, so HTTPS is secure, but HTTP is not. So it's easy to understand and get the contents of the HTTP. We're going to see how to get in HTTPS as well, don't worry. So go to unicornitems.com and click on this My Account tab. So it will display a login page, and we're going to give some credentials over here. So I'm going to work with some fake credentials like atilsam and 123456 as password. And if I say log in, it will try to log in. Of course, it will fail because there isn't an account like that over here. But the general idea is that since we are man in the middle, we should have this packet in Kali Linux. Now, if I go back to my Kali Linux, I can just search for these logs and try to find that username and password over here. As you can see, I can see where my user has been browsing. It went to unicornitems.com, okay? And in fact, we're going to see some account credentials over here, like username is atilsam and the password is 123456. Now we managed to hack this computer, we managed to hack this user actually. We managed to get its username, get its password so that we can just use it to log into his account. Now, as you can see, we get other logs here as well. We can see where he's browsing, where he's trying to go. We can see that for HTTPS websites as well. But in order to read the packets, like usernames and passwords, we need to be HTTP. We need to be in the HTTP websites. So now we are certain that it works on HTTP. So you can test this with other websites as well if you can find some HTTP websites. And it's actually very easy to find. Just try to find some of your favorite websites. But for HTTPS, we're going to learn, but we're going to do that in the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can use man-in-the-middle framework in order to downgrade HTTPS websites to HTTP websites. In fact, we're not going to do anything different because when we run man-in-the-middle framework, it runs something called SSL strip, and this software actually tries to downgrade HTTPS to HTTP. And it's successful most of the times, but it's not successful if the website uses HSTS, that is strict HTTPS protocol. Okay, in that case it actually forces the browser to open the website in HTTPS form, but most of the websites do not use that. So let me try this with my own website. Okay, so if I go to atilsemansiolu.com, okay, it will start, but it will open in HTTP mode. As you can see, we don't have HTTPS in front of this website, but you know this runs on HTTPS. You have seen it before, but now we managed to downgrade this to HTTP. But if I click on other tabs, it may go into HTTPS as well. So it's not successful every time, but it is successful most of the times. And even we don't have anything, of course, in my own website to log in, so we cannot actually test this with my own website. But we can test this with other websites like LinkedIn, like hotmail.com, because they're using HTTPS, but they are not using HSTS. So let me try this, okay? Rather than my own website, I'm just going to go into hotmail.com. So Hotmail actually uses HTTPS, but as you can see, we will manage to downgrade it to HTTP. Now it's not secure. Now if I try to sign in from hotmail.com, it will just open it in HTTP as well, and we will be able to get these credentials. Now if you cannot downgrade this, you may have to try it again, or you can just try it with other websites like LinkedIn or Stack Overflow. Okay, but I'm just going to do this in Hotmail, and as you can see, it's still in the HTTP. And I will come over here to sign in. I will give atilsem as username. I will give 123456 as password. So right now it will fail, of course, because there isn't any account like that as far as I know. But let me go to my Kali Linux, and if I scroll up a little bit, then I can see all the logs over here. Okay, and I will search for the username and password that we have just captured, and here you go. Now we have this atilsem, okay, and we should have the password over here somewhere. Let me look for it. Yep, I believe we have this over here. Okay, the password is 123456. So we are certain that it's working in the HTTPS as well. Remember, I have told you that the man-in-the-middle framework is not getting updates anymore, but the reason that we're not going to include better cap in this course only is that SSL strip actually works better in man-in-the-middle framework, at least at this moment. So this is more successful when it comes to downgrading HTTPS to HTTP. And since most of the websites actually use HTTPS right now, it makes sense to use this man-in-the-middle framework. If you cannot succeed, then don't worry, we're going to see how it's done in BetterCap as well. So if you cannot make man-in-the-middle framework work, then it's okay. We're going to see how to do all of these things in BetterCap as well. And let me show you another thing. If we go to facebook.com, we won't be able to downgrade HTTPS to HTTP because, as I said before, there is something called HSTS. This is strict HTTPS, and it prevents us to downgrade HTTPS to HTTP like that. So even though I'm running SSL strip right now, it doesn't succeed to downgrade it. So you may think at this point, how are we ever going to hack into the Facebook, okay? Or how hackers steal Facebook or Instagram passwords? It's not actually ideal to steal those information from man-in-the-middle attacks. We're going to cover this as well later on in the course. We're going to see how actually hackers social engineer people to run their steal their Facebook passwords, Instagram passwords, or other passwords as well. But right now we're trying to learn about network attacks, and man in the middle is the attack that we should master, okay? And in fact, in the BetterCap section, we're going to see how we can downgrade the HSTS as well, but it will work like 10 or 20 or 30% of the time. And this HTTPS to HTTP downgrade works 60, 70, 80% of time. And of course, if you're targeting an HTTP website, it works like 95% of the time. So there isn't a guarantee that this attack will work and the hackers will steal our information, but there are some probabilities, and we're trying to increase this probability by mastering these tools. So far so good. Now you know how to steal information from the users when they visit HTTPS and HTTP websites. As I said before, we're going to dive into the HSTS later on in the BetterCap section, but right now we're going to stop here and continue with other plugins of man-in-the-middle framework in the next lecture. Hi, within this lecture we're going to learn how we can do a DNS attack using man-in-the-middle framework. We're going to see what is a DNS and why we try to manipulate it. So now my man-in-the-middle framework is actually still running, so I'm going to hit Command C or Control C in my keyboard so that I can stop this from running, or you can alternatively close this terminal down, okay? So what I want to do is to explain the DNS first. So DNS stands for Domain Name Server, okay? So it actually connects the domain name like google.com with the IP address like the IP of the Google. So when you go to some website, it actually forwards this request going to this website request to the DNS server, and it gets a response from the DNS server saying that, yeah, you want to go to this IP address in order to reach that domain, okay? And since we are man in the middle, we can actually manipulate this response. So let me show you what I mean. If I come over here to my browser, when I type google.com, I'm not actually going to some hosting like google.com. I'm trying to go to the IP address of Google, the hosted computer, hosted cloud of Google, so that I can see the content of Google, okay? And the way to do that is going through the DNS, connecting the IP address of the Google with the domain of google.com. So since we are man in the middle, using man in the middle framework, we can actually direct the target to any IP address rather than the actual IP address of the Google. So there are numerous reasons to do that. For example, we may want to divert user or prevent user going to from a specific website, or we may want to redirect them to our own website in which we have some malicious code. Okay? In fact, within this lecture, we are exactly going to do that. We're going to create a web server. We're going to create a web server in which we host a website using Kali Linux. Okay? And later on in this course, you will see its usages. Like we're going to inject some malicious codes to our website so that we can actually run that code on the target computer. Okay? And in order to do that, as I said before, we're going to use the built-in web server. There is a web server in Kali Linux. It's called Apache. And you can actually run this. And since now we are attacking inside of our network, it's very easy to run this. If we were to host Kali Linux as a public machine, as a public website, then we would have to use our public IP first and do some port forwarding next in order to make this work. But luckily we are now inside of our network and we're going to use this option. Later on in the course, we're going to see how we can actually insert some malicious codes to the publicly available websites as well. So if you run this service Apache to start, it will just start the web server for you. Now you can have a website to show to your targets inside of your network. And in order to design or in order to make this website, you have to go to your root directory. So in order to do that, I'm just going to open my file manager and come to this other location. So what I'm searching for is inside of this computer, and it's a folder called var. Okay, so double click on this var and then this W and then this HTML. So var www HTML. So this is the default folder for hosting websites. So if you ever worked with a website before, like a WordPress or some other website, it doesn't matter if you're using Linux, then your website should be located on this folder. Okay, so this is default for all Linux systems. Now you can see some index.html over here. Just right click on it and open it with text editor or LivePad. Because this is the first file that is shown to the user when a user goes into any website. So you can see some other codes over here. It doesn't matter, just hit Command A and delete everything. Okay, because we're going to start from scratch. And in fact, within this lecture, we're just going to write some very basic HTML code like I hack you and display a message to the user. Okay, later on in this course, we're going to see how we can actually host a website in the public IPs as well, but that is not for right now. Right now, I'm just going to open H1. This is a header, okay? And in the header, I'm just going to write I hack you. And over here, you have to put a slash to close this down. And be aware that I'm using this angular parentheses rather than regular parentheses. And the slash has to be in the front of this _1, okay, H1. So this is a header, this is basic HTML code, and it will just display a message like I hack you to the user. So once you save this, you can close this down, and now your index HTML is ready. So this will be displayed if I go to my IP address right now. Now let's test this. I will go to 10.02.15, and if I hit enter, I will see I hack you. Now this is cool. Now actually you can reach that from the Windows as well, because you're on the same network, and if someone goes to 10.02.15 in the Windows, they will see the exact same web page. And this is how web pages work actually. We can do that on the public IP as well. So when a user writes some public IP address, they go to that website and they see the content of the index HTML. And as you can see, I can reach that website from my Windows as well. Now what I want to do is to redirect users, the target actually, when they try to go to some website, rather than going to the true IP of that website, they will be redirected to this 10.02.15. Let's do that in the next lecture. Hi! Now within this lecture we're going to see how we can use man-in-the-middle framework to conduct an DNS attack. So as you might remember, we have used this command before: Python man-in-the-middle framework py eth0 arp spoof gateway and target. Now at the end of this command I will just add one parameter, and this is --DNS. It stands for DNS attack, and it actually manipulates the DNS when we want. But I'm not going to run this command right now because we haven't specified to man-in-the-middle framework which websites do we want to redirect and which IPs do we want to redirect them to. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go into my man-in-the-middle framework master folder, and over here find the config folder, and here you will see a file called man-in-the-middle framework.conf. So open that file with text editor. Okay, we're going to edit the configuration file of man-in-the-middle framework tool, and over here if you scroll down a little bit, you will see some DNS section like that. So under DNS section, the first thing that you want to find is these A records. So we're going to change these A records. As you can see, there are some default values over here, like direct sprawl.org to this IP. We're not interested in that. I'm just going to say star dot, and I'm just going to write the domain name that I want to direct to. Okay, so I'm just going to do this in my own website like this. Okay, and I will say 10.02.15. Of course, you can use the same example as well. And remember, we have to find an HTTPS website rather than HSTS because we have to strip it first in order to make this work. And I'm just going to try this on unicornitems.com as well. After you save this, you can close this down, and now if I run this command, it will take that DNS option from the configuration file. So let's run this. Okay, and let's go to the Windows, and now let me open this Explorer one more time, and let's go over here to settings to clear the cache so that we won't be experiencing any odd behavior from this browser. Okay, so let me clear all of these things and come back once it's done. So first thing I'm going to test is to go to a website called hotmail.com. So this hotmail.com is not in our DNS manipulation list, so I expect my browser to open this in a regular way. Like over here, it opened the hotmail.com. It actually stripped down the SSL as well, so we are just seeing this in HTTP form, and it works. Okay, so we didn't break anything, so it's okay. And the next thing that I want to test is to actually go to my own website. So if I manage to downgrade it to HTTP, it will open the domain name for me, but it won't go to my own website. Rather, it will just go to 10.02.15. So let me go to atilsamasioli.com over here. Okay, and if I hit enter, it will open the 10.02.15 content for me. Here we go. Now we see the I hack you, even though the domain name is not 10.02.15. because it thinks that this browser thinks that this domain name is hosted in the 10.02.15. So let me try this with unicornitems.com as well. And since this is HTTP, it will be easier actually, and we will see the iHack you over here as well. So here we go. Now we manipulated the DNS queries, the DNS responses. So this is one of the reasons that we were using man-in-the-middle framework actually. Remember, I told you that BetterCap is actually updated and it's much newer compared to the man-in-the-middle framework, but man-in-the-middle framework runs DNS attacks and SSL strip in a more efficient way when we compare it to the BetterCap, at least at this moment. So right now you know how to run attacks using man-in-the-middle framework. And now we're going to move on to the BetterCap so that we can have two options. We can learn two tools in order to run these man-in-the-middle attacks because they are so important in the network security subjects. Of course, if you don't want to watch the rest of these BetterCap sections, you're more than welcome to do so, but I really suggest you go ahead and watch them so that you can learn how to work with BetterCap as well. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how to use BetterCap framework in order to run man-in-the-middle attacks to the target computer one more time. So actually, we have man-in-the-middle framework, we have BetterCap, and we have other tools as well. So the reason why we are going with BetterCap is that man-in-the-middle framework is not updated anymore. Okay? So BetterCap is spelled like this, and you don't have to write that right now. If I hit enter, it will start in my terminal, but in your case it won't be installed. So I'm coming out of this. I'm just writing this to show you how it's spelled. It's spelled like BetterCap, and this is an updated tool. This gets regular updates and it improves itself regularly. And we have other tool called ethicalhacker, and we're not gonna cover that tool in our course. Actually, it works fine as well, but it's kind of hard to use it. It's not very user friendly. So rather we're going to go with BetterCap. Okay? And of course, we have man-in-the-middle framework as well. If you have skipped man-in-the-middle framework lectures for some reason, it's spelled like this. But as I mentioned before, it stopped updating, and for some time I believe it will be outdated, even though it's running fine right now and it's even performing better in some sort of functions when we compare it to the BetterCap. It will be outdated for some time in the future, so we're going to cover BetterCap as well. We have already seen how to use man-in-the-middle framework to run man-in-the-middle attacks. Now I'm just going to delete this and I'm going to install BetterCap so that we can start learning about this tool. So all you have to do is just run apt-get install for starters, but before we do that, I'm just going to write apt-get update in order to update my repositories, okay? So first you have to run this apt get update, and it will take a minute and it will update your repositories, and then we're going to run apt-get install to install the BetterCap on our Kali Linux machine. Once it completes, you can just write apt-get install BetterCap. So once you do that, you can hit enter. It will start downloading the necessary libraries and the BetterCap itself. If it asks you if you want to continue by making you write Y or N for yes and no, of course you're just going to write Y with a capital Y, okay, uppercase Y, and hit enter during this installation process. But in my case, it didn't ask me, so I'm good to go. And now I'm just going to show you how to use this tool. Now we are actually ready to start BetterCap. So let me clear this terminal up, and in order to run BetterCap, we have to specify our interface, like we did in the man-in-the-middle framework section. Now I'm just going to say BetterCap / not slash dash again, iFace. So this stands for interface, and BetterCap eFace ETH0. Now I'm using my Kali Linux and Windows in the same NAT network, so I can go with ETH0. But if I wanted to do that on my wireless USB Wi-Fi card, I should have written WLAN O. Once you do that, hit enter and it will take you in the BetterCap tool. Now, as you can see, it shows my own IP, which is 10.02.15, and it has a great documentation built inside of the tool. All you have to do is just write help, and it will list all the modules, all the things that you can use with BetterCap. So this is it. As you can see, we have a lot of modules over here, and we're gonna cover the most important ones. And here we have some other comments as well. We're gonna see what they are, don't worry. So this looks like a complicated big tool. This is indeed a big tool, but it's not complicated at all. So first module that we're going to dive into is called net.probe. So this has actually one module running right now, and it's events.stream. And it keeps track of what's going on behind, what's going on in the tool, so it's always running. Okay, it doesn't make any sense to turn this off, so it comes running as default, by default. But as you can see, there are a lot of modules over here and none of them is working. So we're gonna start with net.probe. So I'm going to write help net.probe, and it will show me the documentation of the related module. So as you can see, this keeps probing the new hosts on the network, so it sends some UDP packets so that we can learn what kind of devices are on our network. So we did this by using NetDiscover or Nmap before. Now we're going to use this module in order to get the devices connected to our network. So if you say net.probe on, it will just start the net.probe for you. So as you can see, it already detected the Windows machine on our network. So I have my Windows machine over here, and I have this 10.02.4 IP in the Windows machine, and it detected the IP and it detected the MAC address as well. Now if you run help, you will see net.recon and net.probe is running. So recon is a dependent module of net.probe, so they work together to get every device connected to the network. And if a new device comes in, it will automatically detect it and it will show a notification to you saying that, yep, this device just got connected to the network. And it's very cool actually. So in fact, if you have BetterCap, you don't have to use NetDiscover, you don't have to use Nmap. If you say net.show in any point in time, it will show you this cool table where you can see the IP, the MAC, the name, and the vendor and other parameters as well. For example, we see the gateway over here, which is 10.02.1 in our case, and we see this 10.02.3 and 4, and this 3 should be the VirtualBox itself, but in our case we are interested in with 10.02.4, which is our Windows machine. So we see the result like we did in the NetDiscover, and in fact I believe this is a little bit more detailed and it's actually working very good. So as you can see, the better cap is kind of more comprehensive when we compare it to the man-in-the-middle framework. It's kind of more user-friendly. So what we want to do is to learn how we can run an ARP attack against this 10.02.4, against our Windows machine. And I'm going to stop here, and we're going to learn how to do that within the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can conduct an ARP attack using BetterCap. So in my Windows, if I run ARP-A like we did before, we will see the MAC addresses and the IP addresses are related to them in a table. And as you can see, my Kali Linux and my gateway over here have different MAC addresses like it's supposed to be in a regular situation. Okay, so my Kali Linux has this MAC address, and my gateway actually has a lot different MAC address. But we're gonna change that, aren't we? Because we're going to run an ARP attack using this arp.spoof module. So this is a module, and as usual, I don't know how to use it, so I'm going to write help arp.spoof. So it will show me the documentation related to that specific module. So here you go, we have these commands over here like arp.spoof on, and it turns on the ARP spoofer, and we have arp.spoof off, obviously. And we have this thing, arp.ban on. So this actually starts the ARP spoofer, but it kind of run a deauthentication attack, like we did in the previous section. So it disconnects the target from the network. So we can even do an deauthentication attack using this module over here. But we're not particularly interested with that. We just want to do an ARP attack to be man in the middle. Okay, so before we go on and start this arp.spoof, we have to take a look at these parameters as well, because we're gonna change some of them. For example, in the first parameter, we have this ARP spoof full duplex, okay? So if this is true, both the targets and the gateway will be attacked. So this is what we regularly do to be man in the middle, right? We attack the target and we attack the gateway. We say that we are gateway to the target, and we say that we are target to the gateway, so that we would be man in the middle. And by default, this is false. I don't know why this is the case, but we have to make sure that we change it to true, because we want to run this attack in a way that it would put us in the middle of the connection, and it would just attack the gateway, and it would just attack the target as well. So in order to change a parameter, we use this keyword set. So after set, you can leave a space and write the parameter that you want to change, like that, arp.spoof.fullduplex, and you can hit tab in order to complete this as well. And then you leave another space and write the value that you want to set to that parameter. So in our case, we want to set it to true. So you can just say set arp.spoof.fullduplex true. So this is good. And let's go to another parameter over here. We have some internal parameter and we have some targets. Obviously, we're going to change the targets later on, because we want to specify a target to run this attack on. But before, you can take a look at this arp-spoof.internal. So within this internal, if this is true, local connections among computers of this network will be spoofed. Otherwise, only connections going to and coming from the external network. So by default, this is false. Okay? So you can just use the same command in order to make this true. I'm not gonna do that by now, because it works by default, but rather I'm just going to go into these targets. And I will say set arp.spoof.targets and the target that I want to run this attack on is 10024, right? So if you want to specify more than one target, you can put a comma over here and leave a space to specify multiple targets on the same network. And again, I didn't change the internal, but if for some reason, if your attack doesn't work, I believe you should come over here and change this, okay? And then come over here and say arp.spoof on one more time in order to test this. So if I say help, as you can see, ARP spoof is running right now. So if I hit ARPA one more time, as you can see, now my Kali Linux has this MAC address and my gateway also has the same address, which means I'm man in the middle. So let me try to go to google.com to see if my connection works. Here you go, my connection works. So this is good. So let me come over here, and right now actually I'm spoofing the target. Now like we did in the man in the middle framework section, we want to get the data out of the target, right? We want to see the passwords, we want to see the usernames and other stuff as well. Let's do that within the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can retrieve the information from the target computer so that we can know how hackers steal usernames and passwords from the target computers when they run a man-in-the-middle attack. Now I am man-in-the-middle, right? I have the same MAC address on my Kali Linux and my gateway in my Windows virtual machine. Now it means that I get to get these packets from this computer before sending them to the router, or getting from the router and before sending them to this virtual machine. And in order to actually see these packets, we have to have a sniffer module running on our better cap. And of course we have this module, right? So if you come over here, we are looking for net.sniff. So as usual, I'm going to run help net.sniff. So you see a lot of parameters and a lot of commands inside of net.sniff. And the only thing that we are interested in is here that net.sniff on, actually, because we're not going to change any other parameters. But as you can see, this net.sniff on, this will start the network sniffer in background. And if we say net.sniff off, it will just stop it. So you can see the parameter descriptions over here, but they are very good by default. So I'm going to leave this as it is. And all I'm going to do is just write net.sniff on. So this is standard syntax in better cap. So maybe you remember the previous lecture when we have written net.prob on, arp.spoof on. So this is the same thing, net.sniff on. And if we run help, you can see that net.sniff is actually running at this moment. Now let's go back to our Windows machine and just run a browser over here. And you can try this with Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge as well. So this comes with Microsoft Edge. So it's kind of convenient to use Microsoft Edge for test purposes, but of course you can just download Google Chrome or any other browser to test this with. So man-in-the-middle attacks do not perform or do not behave in the same way with different browsers. So it may be a good idea to test this on different browsers so that you can decide to go with better cap or man-in-the-middle framework depending on their performance on different browsers. So I'm going to go over my unicornitems.com one more time. So this is unicornitems.com, and this website belongs to me, and it's kind of an e-commerce website, but I really keep it for test purposes. It has HTTP built in inside, so it doesn't have HTTPS. Later on, we're going to see what kind of websites can we use in order to test HTTPS as well. For example, right now you can just go google.com and it obviously uses HTTPS, and you can see these HTTPS secure sign in front of this website. Okay, so it's kind of easy to get data from HTTP, and we're gonna start with HTTP. As you can see, we get this data in net.snif module over here, right? We have all of these packets coming onto our terminal. And in fact, we can see the HTTPS websites as well. So the target is browsing msn.com, target is browsing google.com, and everything. So MSN comes from this default page, and Google, yep, we actually entered into Google, and we went into unicornitems.com. We can see every log coming on our terminal. What we cannot see in HTTPS is the details of these packets, like usernames and passwords, and we're gonna deep dive into that later on in this course. So over here we see this coming and going, but what we want to do is to find out how we can get the usernames and passwords, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and close this down and continue with these unicorn items, and I'm going to click on this My Account tab so that we can have this login page. So in the username and password section, I'm gonna go for test for username, and for password you can just make something up like 123456 123456 and hit login. So it will send the request, but it won't be successful, obviously, because we don't have that kind of account in unicorn items. But if you come over here to your terminal, then you can search for this username and password, and we're gonna get those over here. Like in this packet we see the unicornitems.com, and over here we see unicornitems.com login page, my account page. Okay, but I believe we cannot see the username and password yet. So let me scroll up a little bit, and if you cannot find it, and in this case I'm right now seeing it on screen, let's pretend that I didn't see it and scrolled up a little bit more. If you cannot find it, of course you can search for it using your terminal find. If you come over here and search for a password, for example, and hit enter, you can just search it multiple times, and here you go. Now you see the test as username, and 123456 and 123456 as password. Now we managed to hack the target user, right? Now we know his username, we know his password, so we can log into his account on unicornitems.com. So it's kind of cool, right? We managed to get this information from the target computer. Of course, we did it in HTTP website, and it's kind of easy to get that on HTTP websites, but it's a little bit harder to get that on HTTPS. And remember to use search and everything in your terminal, okay, and try to focus on what's important or what's not. As you can see, we get a lot of logs over here thanks to the sniffing strength of this better cap tool. But it's important to search for usernames and passwords if you want to get your information directly. And again, we're gonna focus on getting this data on HTTPS websites as well, and we're gonna do that in the next lecture. Hi, within this lecture, we're going to see how we can get data from HTTPS websites as well. So within the previous lectures, within the Man-in-the-Middle framework lectures, we have discussed this. But again, if you have missed them for some reason, I'm going to explain what is HTTPS one more time. So this is linkedin.com, and as you can see, this is running on my host machine I'm not under any attack right now, so it's not man in the middle, it's not even a virtual machine. This is my own machine, and I'm in linkedin.com. As you can see, I have this sign over here indicating that this website uses HTTPS. This is secure HTTP. Okay, so everything coming and going around on this IP is encrypted right now. So even if I get the content, even if I see that there are some packets regarding to linkedin.com, I cannot get the contents of those packets because they would be encrypted. Okay, so even if I'm man in the middle, even if I get the packets, even if I double click on them, I won't see the details. So in order to see the details, we have to make sure this runs on HTTP rather than HTTPS, like deleting this S and hitting enter one more time. Of course, it won't work in this case, but just to visualize what we're trying to do, it's like that. We are stripping the S and we are running this on HTTP when we try to downgrade HTTPS to HTTP. Previously, we did that with SSL strip on man-in-the-middle framework, but this time we're going to use better cap, so we better learn about the caplets. So what are the caplets and why do we use them? Let me show you. We're going to use better cap, right? And caplets in better cap actually are some sort of codes that we run when we try to attack to the targets. So let me start better cap as we usually do with iFace ETH0, okay? And by the way, if you want to get out of better cap in any time, you can just run this exit, okay? It will exit out to better cap. So let me run this one more time and let me run help, because there is no module running right now, right? So we have seen how to work with net.prob, net.recon, net.snf, and even arp.spoof. So none of them is working right now because we started better cap from scratch. So bear in mind that every time you open the better cap, you have to run net.prob, arp.spoof, and even you have to specify the targets from the scratch. You have to make sure you set full duplex to true from scratch when you open better cap. So right now I'm interested in caplets. So what are caplets and how we can see them? If you run this code, caplets.show, it will show the caplets, the scripts that we may want to run with better cap, and you can see the locations of those caplets. So let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see the whole list. As you can see, we see the caplet name and we see the caplet path over here. So path is the location that we can find this caplet file. So they are actually stored under user share better cap caplets folder right now. But for some reason, if you cannot find those information, like if you say caplets.show but none of them shows up, or if you say caplets.show if just a few of them shows up, then don't worry, I'm going to show you where you can find the caplets and just manually import them as well. But for in my case, I can come over here to other locations, and under computer I can look for user folder, okay? And under user folder I have share, and under share I have better cap. So let me find the better cap over here. Yep, this one. And under better cap, as you can see, we already have this caplets folder, and inside of this caplets folder we have various caplets, various scripts that we may want to run with better cap attacks. For example, we're going to use HSTS hijack over here, and let me show you where you can find the latest caplets samples over the internet. So let me go to google.com, and over here I'm just going to search for GitHub better cap. So again, this is stored under GitHub, and this is actually open source. Remember, we use GitHub to find source codes, share source codes, collaborate with other developers as well. So over here we see the BetterCap files. We can actually download BetterCap from here rather than saying apt-get install BetterCap as well. But it's much better way to install this through the repositories of Kali Linux. So let me scroll up a little bit, and I'm gonna find something called caplets over here, and it's located over here at the top. If you click on that, you can see there are some scripts over here, okay, but this is not the particular thing that we are looking for. We are looking for caplet samples. So let me go to BetterCap folder over here. So we were in this BetterCap tool, but as you can see, there are some caplets tool as well. So if you come over here, you will see the samples. So these are the exact samples that we have in our Kali Linux right now. So as you can see, you can actually compare them to your list as well. And if you cannot see them over here, you can just download them and copy and paste them in that folder. Okay? So you have to copy them exactly in the same folder that I have shown you under user, share, BetterCap, caplets. So once you do that, you will be ready to use them. And again, we are interested in this HSTS hijack. So we discussed what HSTS is before, and we're going to discuss that in this lecture as well. So over here we have the JavaScript code, and we have this caplet file over here. In the caplet file, in the .cap file, we actually configure how to use this JavaScript code. And for some reason, it's not working very well at this moment. So we're gonna have to figure out a way to find this, use this efficiently. So we're going to edit this cap file. And even it was working fine, it's good to go into that file so that we can learn how to edit cap files so that we can actually create our own cap files when we need to later on. So if you right click over here, I have this open with Genie, but I believe you don't have Genie in your Kali Linux, so this is an optional software that you can actually install, but we're going to use LeafPad in order to run this. So let me come over here and open a new terminal. Let me minimize this, and in this terminal I'm going to go into that folder and then LeafPad that cap file. So the way to do that is to run cd ... and if you say ls, you can see the user folder over here. So say cd user, cd share, cd BetterCap, okay, and then cd caplets, and then finally we can actually go into the HSTS hijack, so that if I say ls right now, I would see this HSTS hijack.cap. Now I want to open that with LeafPad, so let me zoom in so you can see it better. Let me close this down because we're not gonna use it anymore. So over here we want to open this HSTS hijack cap, so I'm gonna run LeafPad HSTS hijack.cap. So it will open that file in LeafPad, and as you can see, we have a configuration file over here. So as I said before, this won't work when you run it because there are some bugs over here, and we're gonna take care of that, don't worry. And you have to follow every step that I'm doing right now, and even if they fix it, as I said before, even if they fix it with some updates later on, it would be much better for you to understand what we are doing in the background so that you can understand better. And furthermore, I'm going to share the content of this caplet, or actually the caplet file itself, in the resources of the next lecture. So for some reason, if you cannot get it done, or if you just run it and it doesn't work, make sure you download my cap file and put it on your Kali Linux folder. So over here, you can see the documentation. It says that, yeah, you can find the documentation over here. We have already been there, I believe, in the Better Cap HSTS hijack caplet. We haven't read the documentation, but don't worry, I'm going to explain everything. So over here, as you can see, we have some parameters, we have some options. For example, we have some hsts hijack.log, hsts hijack.ignore, hsts hijack.targets, replacements, block scripts, obfuscate, and encode and payloads. Okay, so what are those and why do we want to change them? So there's some weird things here like that, facebook.com and facebook.com. I'm going to explain each of them, don't worry. But for right now, I want to change the bugs. So over here, as you can see, the log file, it's logging everything that we're doing with this Better Cap. In fact, we don't need this log file, okay? We're not going to work with logs, but just to make it right, we have to get rid of this local, because as you can see, our software isn't under this folder, it's under user share Better Cap. So it says that user local share Better Cap, and it causes a bug, okay? So make sure you delete the local if there is a local over here. And it's the same thing as payloads as well. As you can see, we have this SSL strip, we have this hsts hijack.js and everything over here. So this is buggy as well because we don't have user local share Better Cap, we have user share. So delete the local from here, okay? And we're gonna use this hsts hijack.javascript. So we are leaving this as it is. But in the payloads, we don't need SSL strip because we're going to use hsts hijack.javascript anyhow. So we're going to get rid of this SSL strip and we're going to leave only the keylogger.js over here. So let me tell you what are those. So payloads are the payloads. Payloads are the malicious files, malicious codes that we want to run against the target. So I'm deleting all of this because we won't be using them. We're only going to use keylogger, and just we have to delete the local from here as well. And after the keylogger, it's actually deletable as well. So we want to get rid of everything after keylogger, like Firefox bypass and other stuff as well. So these are the payloads that we're not going to use. So why do we use keylogger? In order to get the keylogs from the target, because we're going to run an HSTS attack, we're going to run some SSL attack to the target, and we're getting the information from the target, and we are trying to understand the username and password of the target at this case. And it's nice to have a JavaScript code running a keylogger in order to log every keystroke of the target, so that even if we miss something like a username or a password from the user, maybe it will be captured by keylogger. So we are running a keylogger against the target with this code as well. But this is not the main reason that we are using this, okay? The main reason is the HSTS hijack. And over here in the encode section, we have to make this false. We don't want anything to be encoded at this moment. And this is it. This is to fix the bugs. Later on, in the next lecture, we're going to do the most important configuration over here with targets and replacements. And then we would be ready to attack the target. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to finish the configuration of our HSTS hijack caplet. So far, we have fixed the bugs. Now it's good to go, but we have to specify some parameters over here like targets and replacements. We haven't discussed those yet. So as you can see, we have these targets and we have these replacements over here, and it's kind of a weird thing, like Facebook facebook.com rather than facebook.com. So what happens here is that when we specify a target and a replacement for that target, this tool, this script, will try to redirect facebook.com to facebook.com. So why does it do that? Because as you can see, facebook.com is actually an HSTS website, so it uses strict HTTPS protocol so that there isn't any way to downgrade HTTPS to HTTP, because it forces browsers to open those websites in HTTPS anyway. But we will replace that domain with facebook.com, okay? So we would be able to downgrade that, and it will load up exactly in the same way as facebook.com. So when a user gives a username and password, we would be able to get that. It's a low chance, okay? It's not that successful, but it is a way to break HSTS. So with using this HSTS hijack caplet, we would be able to downgrade HTTPS websites to the HTTP, and also we would attempt to downgrade HSTS websites to HTTP as well. And let me show you what a subdomain is. So user.facebook.com is a subdomain of facebook.com, okay? So let me delete this. So this star stands for subdomain. So it says that it's not facebook.com like that, okay? So if you want to target facebook.com, you can just write it explicitly over here, and below in the same position, in the same index, you can write facebook.com, and this will target these subdomains of the Facebook, star.facebook.com, like user.facebook.com, okay? And I'm going to delete everything from here as well. The bing.com and big.com is okay, but I'm going to delete everything up until this point from here, okay? And later on, maybe we want to target linkedin.com or twitter.com. I'm gonna include them as well. So for example, let me just write bing.com and bing.com, okay? So other than the subdomains, I will just target the whole website as well. And then later on, maybe you want to redirect something like linkedin.com with W to linkedin.com without W, okay? Sometimes it gets in the way of downgrading HTTPS to HTTP, even though linkedin.com doesn't use HSTS at this moment. Maybe they will eventually, or sometimes this gets in the way of downgrading HTTPS to HTTP, as I said. So maybe it's a good idea to include www.linkedin.com over here and replace that with just linkedin.com, plain linkedin.com rather than www, okay? So that's cool. Maybe we want to add twitter.com as well because it uses HSTS. So let me just say twitter.com and twitter.com over here. And you will realize that user won't be able to tell the difference between carn and com because carn looks like com in the browser. Okay, we will see how it works. Now I believe we are good to go. So far we have fixed these local issue. Okay, we fixed the bugs. We actually dive into targets and replacements. We don't have to change block scripts over here because it's already not in use, okay? And we changed the encode as well. We changed the payloads, we changed the script, and I believe that's good. So make sure you're writing this in the right way, in the right position, okay? And copy these replacements and paste over here to domains as well, because we want to have the same thing in the replacements and in this DNS spoofing domains. We're not even going to use DNS spoofing in this case, but as I said before, DNS spoofing works man in the middle framework in a much better way when we compare it to the BetterCap. But BetterCap has its own DNS spoofing module as well. So anyway, as I said before, we're not using block scripts. As you can see, there is a hash in the front of this line, so we're good to go right now. Make sure you have exact same cap file, and remember, I'm going to include this file in the resources of this lecture, so if you encounter any problem, make sure you download it and use mine rather than yours. You can just copy and paste the contents if you want as well. Now we are ready to use in this caplet inside of our BetterCap. Now if you come to this point, make sure you exit the BetterCap and clear, so that you will have a good blank terminal, because in the next lecture we're going to use this file to attack the target computer. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can use these caplets in real action. So we have our Windows machine running on here on the same NAT network as our Kali Linux, and I'm going to run BetterCap in a way that we always do by running iface eth0. And over here we have to run this net.probe, net.recon, and ARP spoof and everything like we did before. So I'm going to run net.probe for starters. Okay, so now it detected our Windows virtual machine. Over here we can see the net.probe and net.recon are working right now, and later on we need to set the ARP spoof parameters. Remember, we had to be man in the middle eventually, so even though we are using HSTS hijack right now, it won't do anything unless we are man in the middle. So we're going to use ARP spoof like we did before. So I'm going to run help arp.spoof. So remember the parameters that we want to change over here. So it was ARP spoof full duplex and ARP spoof target. So let's start with ARP spoof full duplex. We have to set it to true in order to attack both the gateway and the target. And next thing that we want to do is to change the ARP spoof targets. So set ARP spoof dot targets to 10024. If you have multiple targets, you can put a comma and write the other ones as well. Okay, after that I believe we are good to go and start the ARP spoof on. Okay, and remember, if you come across any problem over here at this point, because we're trying to run this with a caplet this time, so you may encounter some problems. If it doesn't work, you're more than welcome to change this arp.spoof.internal parameter as well. So far we have been working with this in default mode, and it didn't cause any problems for us up until that moment. But if it causes some problem, come over here and say set arp.spoof.internal to true. I'm not going to do that right now, but you know how this works. So I'm just going to say arp.spoof.on, space on, and next thing for us to run these net.sniff, because we want to sniff the target packets over here. Okay, and then we are ready actually, but remember, we have to run our HSTS hijack caplet as well. In order to do that, I will just type HSTS hijack and hit tab, and it will autocomplete it for me like that, HSTS hijack / HSTS hijack. If I hit enter without doing anything else, it will start this caplet like it's supposed to. As you can see, now our HSTS hijack is running, and it runs some JavaScript codes, it runs some keylogger as well. Now let's head back to our Windows machine. Okay, I'm going to open my browser and I'm going to clear the cache as usual, because we're going to try a new thing over here. Okay, go to the settings and say clear everything from here. So we will start fresh, and I will start with HTTPS websites rather than HSTS because it will be easier for us to test to understand whether this is working or not. Okay, so right now we have to figure out some HTTPS websites rather than HSTS. And we have worked with LinkedIn and Stack Overflow, I believe, in the previous lectures. So let's go for LinkedIn one more time. So here you go. Now we managed to downgrade LinkedIn to HTTP. As you can see, we don't see any secure icon over here, and we don't have HTTPS in front of LinkedIn. Now, if we try to get the data out of this website, I believe we can because it's HTTP anyway, right? Let's try with some other website, like let's go for Stack Overflow. So this is a website used by developers to find some solutions to common problems. And here you go. This is HTTPS, and we managed to downgrade it. Now, if you try this with any other websites, with HSTS websites, there is a high chance it won't work unless you put it on the targets and replacements over here, and I will show you how to use them as well, don't worry. So let me go to this website. So this is xsozluk.com. So this is kind of a Turkish website, but this uses HSTS, so I'm just showing it to you because, as you can see, we didn't manage to downgrade it to HTTP, and if we didn't include them in the caplet configuration, it won't be easy for us to downgrade from HTTPS to HTTP. But let's focus on HTTPS right now. We're going to talk about HSTS in the next lecture. Right now, we're in the linkedin.com. I'm not signed in, and this is not even HTTPS, so I believe this is a good catch for us. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to sign in, not using this pop-up menu because it won't be effective. Maybe they will just get rid of this once in a while. So I'm just going to try and click on the sign in button, and it will open a new page for us, I believe, and we would be testing to see if we can just go to other websites, other pages of this website, and be still in the HTTP as well, so that whenever we try to browse in the linkedin.com, we would still get the data from the target. So it's kind of an important thing because HTTPS to HTTP might occur once, but if we lose it later on, then all the packets will be again encrypted and we won't be able to see them. So let's go and try this. Let's click over here to sign in button. Okay. And it should take us to the sign in page of linkedin.com. Once we are there, we're going to bring in some credentials and test if we can get them in the Kali Linux. And as you can see, it doesn't work smoothly as we have seen in the man-in-the-middle framework. It's still trying to go into the sign in button, sign in page, I believe. Okay, but it doesn't load it so efficiently. Maybe it's because of our connection, maybe it's because of the tool itself, but BetterCap actually does this very often. As you can see, I have to refresh this to go into the sign in page. So this is again HTTP, so I believe we can test this. We can just go for test at gmail.com, for example, and for the password you can just make up something like 1 2 3 4 5 6, and let me hit sign in. Okay, so it's still trying to send a request to the server. Once it completes sending, we can see it in our logs in Kali Linux. Okay, so as you can see, it's still stalling a little bit. But let me go to the Kali Linux and let me try to find if we manage to send this data. Let me just search for test@gmail.com. Okay, yeah, let's search for it. I believe we are finding it. Yeah, let me go back. No, I don't believe it's done. Let me send it one more time. As you can see, it's not smooth as man in the middle framework. That's why I didn't remove man in the middle framework from the lectures, even though it's outdated. It's not getting updates anymore. It still works better than better cap in some of the circumstances, okay, like this. And here you go, we managed to get testtest@gmail.com over here. So it works, but it's not smooth as man in the middle framework. So let me search for 1 2 3 4 5 6. Here you go, we managed to get the password as well. Of course, you might think that, yeah, you knew the password and you search for it. How are you going to find the password in a real life example? Of course, you can search for password as well rather than just searching for 1 2 3 4 5 6. And as you can see, it still gives you the password over here. So it takes a little bit time to get familiarized with this kind of log reading, okay, because it's long over here. We have all these packets and layers and stuff, and it may be some kind of hard thing to find the real data between these packets and logs, but you can just search for username, password, some keywords in order to understand what's going on in this network. So as you can see, we managed to break the HTTPS. We managed to downgrade it to the HTTP, and we managed to steal the data from the target computer by using this technique. So it can be done in other HTTPS websites as well. So if it works for you, it's very good. You can continue using that. If it doesn't work for you, you can just try it with man in the middle framework, okay? And if both works for you, then you're very good. You can just use whatever you want in real life examples. But this better cap has also the advantage of attempting to break the HSTS as well, thanks to the caplets, okay? And there isn't very high successful rate in the HSTS hijack when we try to attempt to break the HSTS, but sometimes it works, and there are some conditions to make it work. And I'm going to show all these conditions, okay? But we're gonna do that in the next lecture. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can break the HSTS and how we can downgrade it to HTTP in a better cap tool. So far, we have been using this better cap with HSTS hijack caplet in order to downgrade HTTPS to HTTP. So let me clear my browsing data one more time in my Windows virtual machine so that we can try this new thing, okay? So remember, we included twitter.com in our caplet configuration file. So maybe you can think that, yep, if you go to twitter.com now, it will just downgrade it to HTTP. Actually, it won't happen. It doesn't work like that. So let me test this. Let me go to twitter.com. As you can see, it still works in HTTPS. So even though I can see my attack, my target actually is going into the twitter.com, I cannot see the content of the packets. But it works because if I go to hotmail.com, it will just downgrade it to the HTTP. Like that, okay? So it kind of doesn't work on HSTS right now, even though it's called HSTS hijack. It downgrades the HTTPS to HTTP, but it doesn't work on HSTS. So how do we do it? The key lies over here. If we browse the HTTPS, the HSTS websites from an HTTP website, okay, through an HTTP website like google.com, then it works. So if I go to google.com, Gmail uses HSTS, but we managed to bring down the google.com. As you can see, this doesn't use HSTS. or it doesn't use HTTPS properly because we are actually downgrading it to HTTP, as you can see. Now if I search something from Google, wherever I go it will be HTTP. So if I search Facebook, if I search for Facebook, if I go to Facebook, it will open in HTTP form. If I go to Twitter, it will open in HTTP form. So it depends where user is coming from to that website. For example, if they directly go to facebook.com, it won't downgrade it to HTTP. But if they go through this google.com, then it will work. As you can see, it's still stalling a little bit. It actually distorts our connection a little bit when we use better cap with this ARP spoofing and HSTS hijack caplet, and it takes some time. So maybe you will have to refresh this, or you will have to search this one more time in order to make sure this works. So let me just search it one more time, okay? And let's see if we can get the result. Here you go. Now we see the result. And over here we see the Facebook, we see everything over here like Twitter and other stuff as well. Now, since my google.com is HTTP, even though it says HTTPS over here, okay, in the address tab, if I just open this in new tab, or if I just click on that, it will open the Facebook like that. And you can just click over here, and as you can see, it's trying to load the HTTP version of Facebook, and it managed to load the HTTP version of Facebook. So this is only way you can actually downgrade HSTS to HTTP, if you go to that website through an HTTP website. Okay? So you may think that this won't even work, but as you can see, if I say test at gmail or hotmail.com and give some random password over here, we can go back to our Kali Linux. Once this request has been sent, we can see the content of this request, okay? And in the real life, there is a high chance that a user will just write facebook.com in the browser. They won't go through with the google.com. Maybe you would think, yep, this is a low chance attack, as I said before. Okay, it's not ideal, but it's only way to actually downgrade HSTS to HTTP at this moment. And I believe we have to refresh this, and it took me to a login page. Let me give the same credentials one more time to test this, okay? Say hotmail.com and give some password over here and click on login. So at this moment you can think that how our hackers are hacking Facebooks and Instagrams. As I explained before, this is not an ideal way to hack Instagram passwords, Facebook passwords. We're gonna go into that subject later on in the course. They are using social engineering techniques, okay? And let me search for password, let me search for test, and let's see if we can get these results. Yeah, I believe this doesn't work. Let me run it one more time and let me try to get test. Yeah, here you go. Now we have this test at hotmail.com, and we used hotmail.com in the Facebook, so I believe we managed to get the Facebook. Yep, here you go. This is facebook.com login, and this is not even com. I don't know if you have realized that the web page is actually loaded in the domain of .com. So as you can see, we have this test at hotmail.com. I believe this is coming from the keylogger JavaScript that we have been running with the caplet. Okay, so we have this test as hotmail.c, hotmail.co, hotmail.com. So this is coming from the keylogger rather than the request itself. So this is a beauty of running the keylogger along with our script. Okay, So as you can see, we managed to get the Facebook information as well. But again, this is not an ideal way to hack Facebook passwords. We're going to see how hackers social engineer people to steal the Instagram passwords, steal the Facebook passwords, and how hackers use some other techniques to steal those passwords as well. We are studying the network attacks in this lecture, in this section. Actually, we are trying to understand what is ARP spoofing, what is DNS spoofing, how we can inject JavaScript code and stuff. Don't focus on stealing Facebook passwords at this moment. We're going to go into that later on. And again, this is not working very smooth in the better cap. It's working more in much better way, I believe, in man-in-the-middle framework. But if man-in-the-middle framework doesn't work for you, you have this option as well. Let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to see JavaScript injection with better cap. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to see how we can do a JavaScript injection with using better cap to the target computer. We're going to see what a JavaScript injection is, don't worry. So JavaScript is kind of programming language actually, but it's a client-side programming language. It means that we get to run this code in the client, in the target computer, in the browser of the target. Okay, so it doesn't work on server, it works on the computer itself. So we can do some malicious things, we can do some evil things with this JavaScript code. And in the following sections, in fact, we're going to use this technique. We're going to run some JavaScript code in order to get access of the target computers. But right now, we just want to learn how to do that, okay? For example, if you remember in the HSTS hijack caplet, we had this JavaScript code, right? We have one for HSTS breaking and HTTPS breaking, and even we had one for the keylogger as well. So they work all in JavaScript, so they get executed in the browser of the target user. So why does a browser run this? Because in modern websites they use JavaScript codes all the time. In order to display the websites in a proper way, browsers should run this JavaScript codes anyway, okay? So open a new live pad and write this alert and open a parenthesis. And if you put a single quotation mark and write I hate you, okay? And close this down and close your parentheses and put a semicolon, this is your first JavaScript code. So what this code does actually just display an alert message to the user saying that I hate you. So this is very simple. We're going to test with this. So let me save this as, okay? And let me go into my root folder and let me call this something like test, or let me call this util.js. So this is important. You can name whatever you want, but you have to finish with .js because this will be a JavaScript file, okay? So if you save this, now if you open your files in your root directory, you will see this popping up here like that, okay? So let me close this down. Again, this is a JavaScript code, this is a JavaScript file, and we're going to use this file in our caplet. So let me go to my other location and let me go to var user share and then better cap, and then we have to find the caplets folder like that. And remember, we have used HSTS hijack. So let me come over here, and under HSTS hijack cap configuration, we're gonna go and edit this caplet one more time so that we can actually run this JavaScript code as well. So let me open this with livepad, and you can just say open with another application as well and find the other applications. You can go for text editor or livepad, or you can run this from the terminal like we did in the previous lecture. So remember this file, we have been running this keylogger.js right in the payload section. Now all we have to do to run this test alert JavaScript code to add this with comma over here. So write a comma and leave a space and write exactly like this. So star dot not dot colon slash root slash till.js. So you have to specify the path of the file. That's all you have to do. So this will be run along with the keylogger.js, along with the HSTS hijack.js, and we will get to inject that code into the target browser as well. So in order to make this work, I'm going to close everything down. I'm gonna open my terminal and I'm going to start BetterCap in usual way. So again, here you go. Now we are inside of the BetterCap. If you run help, nothing is working. So we have to do everything from scratch again. So net.prob on help arp.spoof. So remember, we have to set these parameters first. So let's do that. Set arp full duplex arp spoof dot full duplex true. Okay, and then set arp.spoof.targets to 10024, and I believe we are ready to go with this ARP spoofing. So remember, you can change this internal to true if you come across any problems later on. So arp.spoof on, and I believe we don't have to run net.sniff in this case because we're not going to sniff anything, but if you want, of course, you can just run it and get the data as well. But you have to just run the HSTS hijack caplet, okay, because that's where our JavaScript code is running. So after this, don't forget to run HSTS hijack. So remember how you do that. So over here, let's see, our ARP spoof is working, and you can just write HSTS hijack and hit tab, and you can hit enter. Now, as you can see, rather than only running our keylogger.js, it also runs root till.js as well. Now it's being executed. So let's go back to our virtual machine, Windows machine, and open these websites. So let me close this down because I want to open this from scratch. And we have to run this with HSTS hijack.cap anyway, because as you can see, it downgrades HTTPS to HTTP, and we CDI hack you. So it displays this message in hotmail.com. As you can see, this is hotmail.com, and it's downgraded to HTTP thanks to the HSTS hijack caplet. So let me try this with my own website. In my own website, I use HTTPS, and here you go, it managed to downgrade my HTTPS to HTTP, and we see the message over here. Okay, you can try this with other websites as well, like HTTP websites, unicornitems.com. It will obviously work in HTTP as well, because it's the easiest way to go. But it won't work in HSTS websites. It won't work in any website that you cannot downgrade. Here you go, it works in HTTP as well. And if you try this with Facebook, or if you try this with Twitter, you won't see any results because they will be in HSTS. Of course, if you manage to downgrade HSTS to HTTP like in the previous lecture, it will work eventually, okay? And in the following sections, we will use this technique in order to do some malicious code, do some damage, and get some control over the target computer. But right now I just wanted to show you how it's done. Okay, it's possible to inject JavaScript code to the target computer if you're man in the middle. So let me close this down, and that's it for BetterCap and man in the middle framework. And you can see the other features and other usages of these tools as well, and there are some like you can use DNS spoofing in BetterCap, and you can use JavaScript injection in man-in-the-middle framework as well, but it works better this way. So I just wanted to emphasize the strong sides of each tool, so I just showed you the strong usages of each tool. Okay, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed man in the middle section. So let's stop here, and within the next lecture we're going to see Wireshark and its usages in the network security. Hi, within this lecture we're going to see how to use Wireshark. So Wireshark is actually a protocol analyzer. It's not an actual ethical hacking tool. It's used by network administrators to track what's going on inside of a network. You can see all the packets and all the details of packets inside of Wireshark, so that you can keep track of what's going on in your network. You can see the TCP packets, you can see the ARP packets, you can see the HTTP packets as well. You can see every packet, and you can know which users going to which website, which users trying to open a connection to which IP address, and so on. So this is widely used, and it's not only used in Kali Linux, it's used in Kali Linux, Linux distributions, Windows, Mac OS, and every possible distribution that you might want to think of. Okay, but we're going to use it in Kali Linux. First, we're going to see how to use it in our own network, in our Kali Linux network. Okay, later on we're going to be man in the middle and try that to see what's going on in the Windows machine as well, in the target machine as well. So Wireshark actually comes pre-built in Kali Linux. So if you come over here to your applications, you can search for Wireshark and just click one of them to open it. Okay, the other way of opening Wireshark is through terminal. So come over here to your terminal. Okay, click on your terminal and open it. So let me make this into central way and zoom in a little bit. Then I'm going to write Wireshark. Okay, and hit enter. This will open Wireshark tool for me. So when you first open this, you may see some error saying that you don't have to use Wireshark with root access. It's not important, just say okay, and you may continue use it afterwards. In our case, we didn't get it, so I'm just going to continue. Over here we see the interfaces. Okay, for example, we see the ETH0 over here, but if I was using my WLAN-O, my USB Wi-Fi card with Kali Linux, then I will see the WLAN-O interface here as well. So I can just choose ETH0, I can just choose WLAN-O, I can just choose whatever interface that I'm interested in. In our case, my Windows machine works on NAT network, so it's connected to ETH0, and my Kali Linux is in the same position as well, so I'm going to go with ETH0. After clicking on this ETH0 interface, I can either go here to this button to start the capturing, okay, or I can just double click on the ETH0 as well. So I'm going to come over here and double click on it, and this will start listening to incoming packets. Right now I don't have many things going on inside of my Kali Linux, so I started to get some of these packets over here, and I believe this is related to what's going on in the background of Kali Linux. So as you can see, there are some TCP packets and some other packets will come flowing in later on. So for example, if my Kali Linux doing an update, like if it's updating something like that, then I will get all the details as well. And don't worry, we're going to see what are those and how to deep dive into them later on. But just so you know, these are packets that are coming in and going out to my network. Okay, So as an example, I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to open Firefox. Yep, I believe this was left open in the previous lecture, so I believe this was doing something in the background. And let me go to google.com and let me search for myself, Atil Samasiolu, okay? So if I Google myself, it will open these things for me, and I'm going to close this down because I have already enough packets to analyze by now. Yep, here you go. Now I see a lot of packets over here. Now I can see everything, every detail to that process that I have just done. I went to google.com and I searched for something. Now I can see every step, everything that is going on inside of this network. Like in the destination part, you can see the IP addresses. In the information part, you can see the detailed information of this packet. Okay, let's do some example and you can see it better. So let's come over here to the top. As you can see in the number, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6. So in the source and destination, we have the related IP address. So this is coming from this source, this IP address, and going to this destination. Okay, and let me scroll down a little bit. As you can see, this is DNS packets. Like in the protocol, we see the protocol category. And as you can see, this is coming from my own IP address, okay, to this DNS server, 8888. This is Google's DNS, and I believe I'm using Google's DNS to resolve my DNS. And since I'm trying to go to google.com, I'm asking where is google.com, and DNS responses to me saying that this google.com can be found in this IP address 172.217.169.196. Okay, so I'm going to load this so that I can see the content of google.com. So this is how it works. I can see all the details, I can see all the steps related to my network. So this comes very handy if you're doing some network security monitoring, if you're an administrator of a network and see what's your network people doing inside of your company or something. Okay, so you can keep track of everything. So we're going to stop here, but within the next lecture we're going to see how we can use it with man-in-the-middle attack as well. Hi, within this lecture we're going to see how we can use Wireshark with man-in-the-middle attack. So far we have been using this in our own Kali Linux. Now I'm going to minimize this and I'm going to launch a man-in-the-middle attack. But Wireshark is running on this terminal, so if I close this down, Wireshark will close as well. So I'm going to open a new terminal from here and I'm going to minimize this. Okay, so now you can use BetterCap, you can use man-in-the-middle framework, you can even use manual ARP poisoning as well in this case, because we're not going to get the sniffing data from the target computer, we're just going to analyze them in our Wireshark, so it won't even matter. Okay, but in my case I'm going to go for BetterCap. So if you like man-in-the-middle framework better, then you can just go for it as well. So I'm going to run BetterCap as usual, saying BetterCap iFace ET80. Okay, and then later on I'm just going to run net.probe on. So this will start net.probe and net.recon, and I'm going to set ARP spoof parameters like full duplex, okay, to true, and I'm going to set ARP.spoof targets to my target computer. Okay, so if you don't know what I'm doing right now, it means that you missed the BetterCap lectures, and if you want you can go back and watch them. If you don't want, you can do this with man-in-the-middle framework or manual ARP poisoning as well. Later on I'm just going to run ARP.spoof, okay, and I don't even need to run this net.sniff, right? So it's not running, but I'm not going to sniff any data from here as well because I have Wireshark at this moment. So Wireshark is still running. So let me go to Windows, okay, and let me run CMD over here to see if my man-in-the-middle attack was successful. So let me come over here and say ARPA. Here you go, this is successful. As you can see, gateway has the same MAC address as my Kali Linux. So let me close this down and let me open any browser from here, okay? I'm going to go into any website to test my attack. So if I go to hotmail.com, for example, I believe it's not going to work because we're not going to downgrade it to the HTTP because we haven't initialized HSTS hijack caplet, right? So if I go to hotmail.com, as you can see, it starts in HTTPS mode. So either you go back and run the HSTS hijack caplet and try one more time, or you can just try it with any HTTP website like unicornitems.com. So let me go to unicornitems.com, okay? You can try with other HTTP websites as well. So over here, I'm going to go into my account, and in the account, as you might remember, there is some form that lets us input a username and password. So for username, I'm going to go for a @sam, and for password, I'm just going to give 1 2 3 4 5 6. So I'm going to log in, okay, and say never here. So this will fail because this account doesn't exist. But in our case, I believe we got this package in Wireshark. So let me go back to my Wireshark, and in fact, as you can see, there are a lot of packets right now. So we have been going around in our Kali Linux and Windows as well. So as you can see, we have these ARP requests as well. We have all kinds of packets, and I'm going to show you the details of these packets. But I'm going to stop it first because I don't want to get any further packets over here. So as you can see, we have a lot of ARP protocols. Why is that? So maybe you remember how this works. We're even going to write a tool for that in the Python section. So as I made net.prob available, it started asking who has this IP address to every device on the network. So it started to gather some responses, and it started to ask for like who has 10.02.1.155, 255, 137, 136, 138. So it asks for every possible IP address ranging from 0 to 255, okay? So it gathers the related answers and it shows the related answers in a summary table to us. So saying that, yep, this has 10.024 and this has this MAC address. So we see every detail, every step over here, as you can see, including ARP packets. So if I was an administrator of this network, and if I solve this, then I can understand there's something going on funny in my network. So I can just understand that this guy has the IP of 10.02.15, is running an ARP request in my network. So I can call him and I can ask him, what are you doing, man? What are you going to do with this information? Why are you running an ARP request, ARP broadcast in my network? So as you can see, network administrators can easily detect if something's going on in their network using this Wireshark. But that is not the case why we are here right now. This is not a network security monitoring lecture. Rather, we are trying to find some passwords and usernames. And in order to do that, we have to find some HTTP protocols because we are looking for some website requests, web responses. So if I come over here, I can write HTTP and hit enter, and it will filter out all the HTTP related protocols over here. So now my packets are narrowed down a little bit so I can find them easily. And another way to look for here is to find the post requests rather than get requests or regular requests. So as you can see, we have get requests here, and I believe we should have some post requests as well. So when you submit a form in the web, like a username or password or any other form, it generally, most of the time, it uses post method to submit that information to the server. Okay, so if you find some post methods over here, if you find some post packets, then it will be easier for you to detect the usernames and passwords. Don't worry, I'm going to show some other techniques as well, but this is one of the techniques. So you look for post methods. Okay, so let me scroll down a little bit so that maybe we can find the username and password without even filtering it further. But I believe, yeah, I cannot find it. So let me find the previous post method over here and double click on it to show you the details of the packets, okay, like that. So if you double click on that, it will open the details in another pop-up window, and over here you can see all the layers, all the details of this packet. So we are particularly interested with this HTTP Hypertext Transfer Protocol. If you're looking for usernames and passwords or contents displayed in the form, then you're going to go over here, okay? And in our case, I believe we cannot find the username and passwords. Even though I double click over here to dig deeper, I cannot seem to find it. So, yep, this was not successful, but we have analyzed the packet over here. We can see all the details, all the requests and responses, right? So let me show you another way of filtering further. So if you come over here to edit, you can say find packet, okay? So once you click on it, it will open another search tab over here. So in this case, we're going to go for string. So if you want to search for text, then you're gonna have to choose string over here. In this case, we have searched for a protocol, which is HTTP, but this time I'm just going to go for a string like username or password or any other value that you might want to search inside of a packet. So when you say username, for example, you can come over here to the top and say find, and it doesn't find anything, and it's odd. And in fact, it's not very odd because over here, as you can see, we are searching it inside of packet list, but what we really want to do is to search inside of packet details. So if you say search this inside of packet details, it really searches inside of packet contents rather than packet names, okay? So make sure you choose packet details over here and make sure you choose narrow and wide from this list, okay? So let me come over here. The case sensitive, if you want to be case sensitive about this, you can choose it, but in our case, I'm not. So I'm going to say find, and here you go, it found something. It's not even a post request, but if you double click on it, you may want to analyze it, okay? You may want to see if it contains username and password that you're looking for. And I believe in our case, it doesn't even contain the data that we are looking for. So as you can see, this is a long packet, so it has some sort of everything, every web page content in it. So let me come over here and search for password to be more specific. And once I do that, as you can see, we landed on a post method. So this is promising. So let me double click on this. And here you go. Now I believe we can find the username and password information in this packet. Here you go. Now we see the HTML form URL. And here we see the username, we see the password, and every detail of this packet as well. So this is how you use Wireshark. Maybe you can get this information with BetterCap and man-in-the-middle framework as well, but you have to learn how to use Wireshark. If you're going to be an ethical hacker or cybersecurity specialist, there is a very high chance that you will come across this Wireshark tool, so you better get familiarized with this and you better feel comfortable using it. So if you're going to attend a certificate like CEH or OSCP or OSWP, we're going to talk about them later on, you will have to know how to use Wireshark. So that's it. We're going to stop here and see you in the next section. Hi! Within this lecture, we're going to discuss how we can make ourselves safe against these man-in-the-middle attacks. So within this section, actually we have seen that hackers can easily steal our data when we are on the same network with them. So the first thing to do is to avoid any open networks. So if you're on a restaurant, if you're in a cafe, or if you're in any place like an airport, try to avoid these open networks. Try to use your own mobile hotspot or some other connection, because in the open networks everyone can join and everyone can try to pull out some man-in-the-middle attack on your computer. Of course, if you have to use this open network, you should also use VPN. So there are a lot of free VPNs in the world, and you can find one, and we have seen how to use VPN within Kali Linux, and within regular computers you can just find and install and start using it immediately as well. And why do I suggest VPN? Because VPNs not only provide us another server connection, another country connection or something, but also they encrypt our data. So this is like using an HTTPS website. Even though a hacker collects your information, gathers some packets from your network, they cannot decrypt it. So VPN usage might avoid any risk, might avoid some complications when you're on an open network. Of course, you can try to track your HTTPS usage as well. If you're going to a website like hotmail.com that you know they're regularly using HTTPS, but if you're seeing HTTP version of that website, then it means that you're under attack. So you need to disconnect, or you need to find out who's attacking you. Maybe you should try to warn the administrator of that network, and if you are the owner of that network, you can go to your admin settings and try to block that user as well. Also, throughout the section, we have seen that if we run an ARP-able command like ARP-A, we can see the router MAC, and we can see if any other attacker is on the network as well. So if any two MAC addresses match, then it means that we are under attack, and we can see the attacker IP. So maybe you're thinking right now, should we run ARP-A regularly to check this? Of course, this is not possible anytime, but you can find some tools like ZARP or XARP to track this, and this will alert you if you're under attack, if someone is actually trying to put themselves in the middle of the connection. So you can use all of these techniques in order to make yourself safe against man-in-the-middle attacks. So we're going to stop here. We completed the inside network attack section. Following the next section, we're going to see the outside network attacks and system attacks, user attacks, social engineering, and website attacks as well.
Hi! I believe now you know how to do ARP spoofing, how to do man-in-the-middle attacks, and how to use additional features to capture the information that is on the same network and capture the screenshots or the keylogs of the victim machines as well. And the most important thing is that you know how to be safe against these attacks as well. Now, if you're ready, let's move on to the next section.